Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining me here on another Sunday night at Poe on the Go. Tonight we have a incredible guest that has such a rich history within Scientology, has amazing stories to speak about, has some real personal insight to the things that have been going on in Scientology. And but before we do that, you know how we got to start these things. We got to bring in our old buddy from Clearwater, Chad. How are we doing?
Thanks, Poe. Doing good, Poe. Thanks for having me.
Let's get that update, brother.
All right, let's go. All right, we got a lot of work to do here. Temp is 79 degrees in Clearwater, Florida. Precip is 0. Wind is at 7. And it's 68 degrees humid. Back to you, Poe.
Excellent, sir. Nothing from Roscoe on the chopper tonight?
No, but Nasty Nathaniel is in the chat.
Oh, is he? All right.
Yep.
All right. Excellent. All right, folks. So as I said, our guest tonight has probably, to me, he has one of the most colorful histories with Scientology. He has such deep insight into what's going on, and that's through who he was personally working for and the things that he saw going on while he was in there. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Mark Fisher. Hey, Mark.
Hi, John. How are you?
Excellent. Excellent. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing just great.
All right. So, getting everything set here. I think, like I was saying in the introduction, I think that you just the information you have, personal information from your time in Scientology, is incredible. There's a lot of people that come out and they don't have the insider depth that you do, and it's amazing. And I know that you put quite a bit of it out on your channel. And folks, I've linked in the link for Mark's YouTube channel, which is Our Scientology Stories Peeling the Onion. Is that correct?
That's right. That's exactly correct. We've been doing it for 4 weeks now.
Yeah, I think, and I got to catch. It was probably your first live stream. I think it was.
Okay.
I didn't catch this newest one, but I caught the first one. So it, like you were saying, it's a learning curve on this stuff as you go.
And yeah, and it's with my co-host Janice Gillum Grady, and we have long experience in Scientology. She much more than me, but we've been friends for over 40 years. We live in the same town, and we decided to start up a channel and actually tell our stories.
That's excellent. I think that, and I've talked with quite a few people who have been either in Scientology or other cult organizations. And it seems like one of the best ways of healing and getting over the traumas of being in those organizations is to literally just tell the story, get it out of you and, put it out there to the world, and people, it helps heal you while it helps others at the same time. So
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That's why we added that. We called it peeling the onion, because that's really what happens when you first leave. You're still totally indoctrinated, and it takes time to basically peel the onion. The more information you get, the clearer things become. And it's also because when you're in Scientology, particularly when you're in the C organization and you're working on staff, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing in that organization. It's on a need to know basis. So you don't necessarily know what was going on when decisions were made. And there's a lot of people that watch our channel that were in Scientology or in the C organization, that they're hearing these stories for the first time. And it's actually, like you said, it's helping them to heal.
Yep. And I've talked about it before with the emotional trauma of having a extremely violent father. And, just the fact that being able to tell the stories about it, and that's the best way I've been able to get over with it. And finally, at some point in my life, and unfortunately it was towards the end of his, that, finally I said, I've got too much going on in my life. I have too much to be thankful for to keep holding on to this hatred that I have. And it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulder. So I certainly understand, how that feels. So
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Before we go too much further in this, if you want to give us a brief bio of who Mark Fisher is, for those who don't know, like you folks don't. So if you,
I am. My name is Mark Fisher, and basically, I got involved in Scientology in 1973 when I was 14, almost 15 years old. My father, who had retired from the Navy a couple of years before, he always was looking for answers to the meaning of life. And he bought a Dianetics book at the local drugstore, read it, and then he got involved in it and started going. This is in Washington, D.C. This is where we got into Scientology. Wow. My dad started going, for training and doing different courses, and he was getting benefit from it. And then he started getting Scientology processing, and he was getting a lot of benefit from that too. So he got to the point after about a year or so, he started talking to me about it, because I was, as a 14, 15-year-old, I was kind of a confused teenager. I wasn't a bad teenager, but I had problems. And so he thought it could help me. So I went into the organization in Scientology. And then from there, I was in Scientology and up until I graduated high school in 1976. And rather than going to college, which I was accepted to, I decided to join the Sea Organization, and we can get into that later. And then from there, I was in the Sea Organization up until September 1990, when I finally escaped for the third time in about 4 months and left it. Okay. My time period in Scientology, I worked in Clearwater, Florida, for several years. I rose in the ranks of management there, and then eventually I ended up out at the international secret base. It was secret at the time, in Gilman Hot Springs. And then the last 6 years that I was in Scientology, I actually was in charge of David Miscavige's personal office up at the secret base up at Gilman Hot Springs. And we shared an office, and basically I was his right-hand man up there at the Golden Era Productions property. So that was basically it. But I finally escaped, and we'll go into that, when I saw the writing on the wall, and several other people escaped with me. Then we ended up here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And then, of course, then they sick private investigators on us and spies. And we can go into all those details. But we're speaking out now to tell our history.
Excellent. And that's awesome. I'm when I saw you get into it, because this is such a growing community with the SPTV and the survivors of Scientology. And I saw you get into it, and I said, let me check this out. There seems to be something a little bit different about you. Then I saw you on Aaron's channel, and the interview there. And that's actually where I got my start with doing the SPTV, was on Aaron's channel. He had asked if someone with a law enforcement background could contact him, and that's where it all took off from for me.
Wow.
I have no personal experience with being part of a cult or any kind of organization like that.
Yeah.
Although to hear some folks talk about it, the being in the Army and then being a police officer for over 30 years, some think that that's a cult itself. So, and I certainly do. I understand, because there's a brotherhood or a family kind of nature to both those organizations that you don't get in normal life. And I tell people all the time, they talk about the SP talk or the Scientology talk, and I'm like, I completely understand it, because I talk in nomenclature or from abbreviations we used in the military and in law enforcement.
Right.
Still use them to this day. So it's hard to break yourself out of that stuff once you're actually in it that deep. So
yeah, and I think I'm sure you can relate too that former Sea Org members and Scientologists, we talk, and like you said, we have our own language. We try not to use it, and I'll try to define different terms if I say something that somebody may not understand. But I'm sure you'll understand the same thing. We had horrific things that we saw and witnessed, but they became every day almost, and you get to the point where it doesn't really phase you that much, because you become used to it. Just like I'm sure as a police officer, the things that you've seen and done, after a while, you become numb to it, and then years later, you have to sort of unburden that and get rid of that emotional, suppressed feelings that you had.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, we call it debriefing in the military, and that started to become a standard saying in law enforcement as well. And I think with being part of something like Scientology or being part of a cult, one of the things a lot of people don't understand is the need for that, either whether it's through psychiatric or through social worker help, but you need some kind of help to help bring you back to the actual real world from it. And you know, that's one of the things I talk about a lot of times on my channel is people always talk about police officers act one way or another. No one ever talks about the fact that we consistently have PTSD on almost a daily basis as a law enforcement officer, and we never get any kind of treatment or help for it. As a matter of fact,
Right.
it's discouraged, and it's a quick way to get yourself blacklisted in law enforcement. So
No, I completely understand.
yeah. When you came out, what kind of, were there any resources for you, or are you basically on your own at that point?
Well, this is September 1990. I left September 15th, 1990. It's a day I'll always remember.
Mhm.
But basically, there were no cell phones. There was no internet. There were barely computers.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had nowhere really to go. I was lucky because I did have some money because I worked for David Miscavige. I got paid more than the normal Sea Org member would get paid. And
Oh, okay.
I had nowhere to go, so I ended up with my wife, who's now my ex-wife, because she wouldn't leave with me. Her family helped me for the first month or two, and then lo and behold, Janice Gillum Grady found me because they had left. Her and her husband had left about a month and a half before me, and found me, and basically we decided all to get together and, you know, go into business together. We had no idea what we were going to do, and so we ended up in Las Vegas, Nevada.
What do you do? Let's see. You there, Mark? I think we lost connection on Mark's end. So as soon as he gets back up, we'll.
Here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you are.
I don't know what happened. Anyway, I was trying to say that we got in the mortgage business. Janice's sister Terry had a Scientologist who was kind of on the under the radar on the way out, and he had a successful mortgage company in California. And he said, "Listen, I'm opening up some a branch in Las Vegas. Why don't you all come to Las Vegas and I'll teach you the mortgage business?" And it was Janice and her husband, me, and then Janice's sister Terry and her husband Fernando. So it was 5 of us, and we rented a 2-bedroom apartment with Janice and her husband in 1 bedroom and Terry and her husband in the other, and I slept on the pull-out couch in the living room, and that's how we got started.
It's turned into a good career for you.
It did. It at first, had the ups and downs. You know what I mean? And
Right.
We had infiltration by Scientology and spies and private investigators, but eventually it turned into a good career. And now I'm to the point now where I retired last year, and I work when I want to and do what I want to do.
Retirement's nice, but it's also you got to find a way to keep yourself going. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I found that out. In law enforcement, if you're in it that long, and like I'll be 55 in November, and it's just way, it's a young man's game. It's not something I want to be that old in, and but I'm still too young not to do anything. So it's just.
Well, and I'm the same way. During the lockdown, I got bored just sitting around. There was nothing to do. So I have to be busy. So I do something part-time, about 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday, just to keep busy. I don't have to, but I do it because I like it.
Yeah.
And then we started doing this channel, and it's become kind of a hobby. It's a fun thing to do. I'm learning, how to do this thing. So it's been rewarding that way.
And I'm amazed at how quickly it becomes so consuming, doing the videos and the YouTubing and all that. I hate the editing so much. Film for 30 seconds, edit for 6 hours, and that.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that stage. We've just been using StreamYard, and that's how we've been doing our videos. So I got to learn the editing part, because there are times when you want to cut something out.
Oh yeah, and folks, make sure that if you have any questions for Mark, you're starting them off with the @ symbol, and then type in Poe. If you're on your phone, it won't autofill, but if you're on your laptop, it will, or your computer. And just make sure you put them in there. I'll try to star them as we go. So
I want to say hi to Goldie. I just clicked over the comments, and I saw Goldie, of course, moderates your channel. She moderates our channel, and I just want to say hello. Shout out to Goldie. She does a great job.
Goldie's the boss mama. We love Goldie to death. She's amazing. And how's the married life doing, Goldie? Have you killed him yet? No.
And Goldie, we figured out what was wrong yesterday, so it won't happen again. that was on our stream. So anyway, I just wanted to let her know that.
Yeah, she's so awesome though. I mean, it's incredible that all that she does, the way she handles it.
John,
So I'm going back to.
John, one other thing too. My partner Janice Gillum Grady, she's in the chat room too.
Oh,
she's
welcome.
following
Oh,
us back here. Yeah.
Hey Janice, how you doing?
She says I'm here. So hi, Janice.
Oh, Nasty Nathaniel, I have emailed you and Facebook messaged you. When you get a chance, shoot me a response, bud. So let's see. And as you'll notice, I take notes as I'm constantly going. It's an old cop thing.
That's okay.
So during your time, at what point did you make the decision to jump into the Sea Org?
Well, it was when I was in high school, because I got in when I was a sophomore, just about 15, 16 years old, and I did several courses in Scientology, communications course, learning how to study. It's called the Student Hat. I did that course, but then I got processing. I actually got one-on-one counseling with the E-meter, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about or whatever, and the lower portion of what's called the bridge in Scientology, it deals with very helpful things in life. Like, for instance, the first level deals with communication. The second level deals with problems. And then it goes on and on. It deals with different aspects of your personality and how you deal with people in life. And I got tremendous benefit out of it. I'm not going to lie. It actually it changed me as a person in terms of my dealings. It made me not shy. I was able to speak to people again and speak in front of people. And so there was a lot of benefit with that. But then on the other side of it, I met at the Washington, D.C. organization. There were a couple of Sea Org members that came there. One was, it was a couple. It was Greg Wilhare was his name, and then his wife, Sandy. And I had met Greg, and I met Greg Wilhare, and I'd never seen anybody like him. He just was like totally on it. Like he was what we called in Scientology A to B. In other words, he didn't go, he went a straight line. Everything was a straight line, and he got things done. It was called, you're going A to B. And that's how he was in everything. And I really liked him. So by the time I got, I was getting ready to graduate. I'd been accepted in 3 universities, and I was going to go that route into college, but then I just thought about it, and I thought, well, you become very, this is the 70s, so very idealistic. We're going to save the world, and I really thought that Scientology was something that would benefit society, and I thought, I'm getting tremendous satisfaction out of this. Okay, I'll go down to Clearwater, and I'll join the Sea organization. So that's what I ended up doing.
Wow. And you see a lot of folks who jumped in during that time through the 60s and 70s. And that was a time when there was a lot of people who were looking for a different kind of path.
Right.
You had the organized religions that were failing a lot of people, and so folks were looking for different ways of finding that spiritual connection or their way to redemption. And so it's very understandable. I mean, there's so many people I talk to that they talk about how the benefits that they got originally from Scientology and how things looked.
And the thing is that one of the reasons I also got into is because I was a true believer, and I wanted to go up what they call the bridge, but I also wanted to learn. And so I was a little unique, although we were supposed to have 2.5 hours a day of study time where we would actually go to a course room. Most staff, or a lot of staff, would avoid that. They didn't want to do it, or they were up late, or they didn't do it. I went almost every day. I can't remember many times. So I learned, I actually got trained in all the Scientology administrative technology or policies. And I did some of the advanced training there as far as being an administrator. And, and then same thing, I wanted to be trained to be a processor. And I did quite a bit of that training as well. So I took advantage of the fact that I was working on staff, because to me, that was one of the main benefits of being on staff. Whereas a lot of people that you hear on the channels and other thing, all they ever got was what they call security checks. They
Right.
they had to confess their crimes, and they didn't really get anywhere with it, and they didn't really get any of the benefits that I got on the lower grades. Now, I did get all the way up to the OT, the operating Thetan levels,
Wow.
before I left, and I have other thoughts about that now that I've been out. But the lower level stuff was really a benefit to me, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved.
Well, you're one of the few that I talked to that were OSA. I mean, not OSA. You were Sea Org that actually went into the OT levels. So many of them just barely passed the going clear stages.
That's exactly right. And like I had done my drug rundown, so I was completely no drugs. Now, I can't benefit. Scientology wasn't the total benefit that I never tried drugs before I got into Scientology. So I was never a druggie or drank or anything like that. But there were a lot of positive things that I thought, would help people in terms of communications, helping people that were on drugs, things like that. Now, I learned later that there were a lot of abuses that were going on. But for me, it actually was a benefit at that time.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring it up like that, because that's one of the things I try to ask folks that I'm talking to for the first time is what kind of positives they actually got from Scientology. A lot of people just want to focus in on the things like the abuses and the scandals and all that. I want to know a little bit deeper into it. I want to know, and that's good. Thank you for bringing that up. I really
and
appreciate
it's true. There were abuses and there were scandals, and a lot of them we didn't learn about till later. But yeah, there's a reason why people got involved in Scientology. They didn't go in going like, "Oh boy, I'm going to be abused. Let me get involved with this."
Yeah.
I mean, there was definitely a hook that they baited the hook, got you in, and it wouldn't have grown as fast as it did if people didn't perceive that there was a benefit to it. And we're talking about capable people. This was not people who were gullible or anything like that. I mean, I've been accused of being gullible, but that's not how I was.
And a lot of folks who've never experienced that kind of life or that kind of situation, you hear from a lot of them where they make the comments, "Well, how could you let yourself be drawn into that?" Well, the fact is that anyone it can happen to.
Yeah.
You see what you perceive to be a better path, a clearer way to do things, or just a better organization altogether, and you get involved. And these organizations are designed to draw you in, make you comfortable, make you dependent upon them. And a lot of folks that have never been through something like that, they just don't understand that that's how these things happen.
Well, and the thing is that I had a purpose. I liked helping people. I mean, I realized early on that was my purpose in life, to help others. I mean, literally, that was my purpose. Everything I've done since then has been to help others. When I, in the mortgage business, helping people buy houses, refinance their houses, get rid of their debt. I've always been a helper. So Scientology, its stated goals and what it was trying to do fit right in with that purpose. So it made me put up with a lot of crap that normally people wouldn't put up with, because I wanted to stay on that purpose. And that was one of the biggest regrets I had, was when we actually left. I was a true believer when I left in 1990 after lots of abuse. But one of the things that I lost the most was I thought, I've lost my purpose. I'm not going to be able to help anybody. And I found out very quickly that there's lots of ways to help people, you know what I mean? And there's lots of ways to fulfill that purpose.
And that's what got me into first serving in the military and then becoming a police officer, was my drive to help others and to also be that person who could stand up for those who couldn't defend themselves. So I understand that completely. Goldie has a great point here. It seems that the entire atmosphere was so different for people that got in the late 60s and 70s. If you could...
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Janice would agree with that as well. I mean, she was basically born into it with her parents in the 60s. My dad got into it. He had been in the Navy 23 years. He was in his 40s by the time he read Dianetics and got involved in it. So, believe me, it was a big thing back then. I mean, when I did my communications course when I first started, I mean, you go in and do the communication course, there'd be 100, 150 people a night doing the course at the same time. Now they're lucky if they have one or two people. I mean, and it was all the time. I mean, the organization in Washington, D.C. was flooded. So it made you feel important. Well, not important. It made you feel like this is growing and this is something that's important.
And that's something that I talked about this with Chris Shelton. Folks who find themselves in these kinds of organizations and these kinds of atmospheres, is that we all have this need to be accepted and be part of something bigger than us. And you get so many people that see that, and that's the easiest way to draw them in, make you feel like you are part of something big that is going to be revolutionary. It's going to change the world. And that gets people so comfortable and feeling so good about themselves. And then you're constantly getting the affirmation from the members and from the leadership, and it just feels great. What do you think?
And then I got involved in management in the late 70s and early 80s, and Scientology was expanding all over the world. I mean, we were opening up new organizations all over Italy, all over Europe, all over Mexico, all over South Africa. I mean, all the time. I mean, the management was focused on expansion, and we're not talking about David Miscavige's little, they're ideal orgs that are basically morgues with no people. I mean, in order to open up an organization, it had to have a minimum number of staff, a minimum number of people on services, and all that. And so we were focused, like, hey, we're expanding, we're going to take over, we're going to help people all over the place. So that also fed into that. We're big and we're going to be helping things. But then, of course, when Hubbard died and Miscavige took over, the organization completely flipped, and now it's basically a real estate donation organization that scams people out of money and drives them into bankruptcy, and they're shrinking. There's nothing there. I mean, the organizations are completely empty, even though they're spending millions of dollars on buildings.
I think you just coined a new phrase, the ideal morgue. So,
I've heard it before, actually. So I can't.
Okay. And I can attest to it. I did a live stream from Tokyo just recently, and I had went to they have the Tokyo org there, which I see what everybody's talking about, whether you go in and it's nothing but computer monitors, things like that. At least the one in Tokyo had a small cafe in it, so that was really interesting. And,
well, it's funny too. You mentioned the monitors, the TV monitors, and all that. Right. That happened all after we left. After I left in 1990. I mean, there were people that were actually worked in those organizations. And Miscavige turned it into like, oh, don't have people talk to other people. Have them watch a film. Have them watch something on listen to something, and that's going to convince them to get into Scientology. And so basically, it's kind of like they became like, they wanted precursor to artificial intelligence. You know what I mean? Have the robots and the machines convince people to do this, and that's just not the way it is.
You need that personal touch. I don't see how a computer monitor is going to do any of that. Terry has a great point. I remember the commercials from the early days when it was very appealing, especially with the post-hippie generation, targeted people who wanted more out of life, being a better person. Yeah. And I can attest to that. I've told the story a bunch of times of how I personally, I was a teenager and I saw the volcano commercial, and I was like, wow. And then I got the book and I was like, what the hell is this? This makes no sense to me. I'm thinking it's going to be some great sci-fi kind of adventure or something like that, and realized it was a self-help book. And I was like, nah, it went right over in the pile of never read again. But
the other attraction for me and for many Sea Org members was I was very young and I was running, huge parts of the world in Scientology. I mean, when I was 22, 23, 24 years old, when I left Scientology in 1990, I was 32 years old. From 26 to 32, I was David Miscavige's right-hand man, running his office and having to deal with him and his BS. But what 26-year-old gets to do that? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Miscavige took over. He was 2 years younger than me. He was 24, so it's crazy.
I hear from so many people that come out, and you were fortunate. You had your high school education, but you hear so many of them have no education, but here they are. They're running this huge multi-billion-dollar organization, doing big roles in it. And, then they come out and they don't know what to do because they don't have an education. They don't, their skill set is all set around Scientology and its directives. And it's got to be amazingly shocking to these folks.
I'll tell you a quick funny story. When I joined the Sea Organization in July 1976, David Miscavige had joined about a month earlier because he had dropped out of high school at 16, and I had graduated high school at 17, almost 18 years old. And we were roommates. That's when I first met him. He'd been there for 30 days, and he was brand spanking new in the Sea Organization. And we were roommates in a dormitory in the Fort Harrison Hotel in Clearwater. Anyway, I brought with me my high school diploma and my Letterman's jacket and stuff from high school because I was an athlete. I was a senior scholar. I did really well. I could have gone to college and done really well. Anyway, he saw my diploma, he looked at it, and he laughed. He goes, you're probably the only person up here on the 9th floor, which is where all the L. Ron Hubbard's messengers lived. You're probably the only person up here on the 9th floor who ever graduated high school. And he goes, I don't know how you did it or how you put up with it. So that's the first part. And then the second part is that Miscavige, since he was a dropout, he didn't have a lot of knowledge. And when I was working for him, I read a newspaper ever since I was 10 years old. I used to read the newspaper every day, including when I was in the Sea Org. So I always knew what was going on in society and with current affairs. Well, he didn't know what was going on all the time. I went and voted in the 1988 presidential election, and he found out I was in town, and he paged me, and I came in. He goes, "What are you doing in town?" I said, "I'm voting for president." He goes, "Why? That's a big waste of time." He yelled and stuff like that. Well, I said, "Well, it's a good thing I did because there was a local objective or whatever on the ballot for Gilman Hot Springs Hemet about our road." And so then he got really pissed off, and he called up the person who handled local public relations and said, "Why didn't you get all the staff down there to vote?"
And right after telling you it was stupid. That's the things about this guy amazes me.
Yeah.
And I see, hearing your story and everything, and you hear so many people that were part of it that their life was so enveloped around Scientology that they never even thought about the outside world, even though the goal was to clear the planet.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always found, such a hypocrisy of Scientology.
Well, and I'm sure you've heard this. I mean, L. Ron Hubbard said it as well as Dave. L. Ron Hubbard said that non-scientists, it's basically us against the world. You know what I mean? It's us versus the non-Scientologists. They were called WOGs. That was the WOG world outside Scientology, and basically you were either with us or we're going to get you in with us, or you're against us. I mean, that's basically the black and white that they operated on.
Wow. I've got to know when LRH passed away.
Yeah.
And Miscavige was taking over. What was the vibe within Scientology at that point?
Well, when it happened, I mean, we were a bit surprised. They announced it in January of 1986, and they had a big, he passed away. I mean, Hubbard had been in hiding for about 6 years, and he only had, 2 or 3 people that were with him and knew where he was.
Right.
And so, I guess a week or two before he passed away, they actually called to get a couple other people, a doctor and people up there with him. But anyway, when it was announced, we were pretty shocked. I was there in Los Angeles, the Hollywood Palladium, when they announced it. They had all the staff come down from the Gold Base, the international base. Wow. And we were pretty shocked. And my wife at the time, she had been an L. Ron Hubbard messenger since she was like 13, 14 years old. And she'd been very close to him. And so, I remember driving back, to the Gilman Hot Springs base after the event, and basically we didn't say anything in the car. It was very stunning. But there was questions about what was going to happen to Scientology, and they tried to roll out different things. That's a long story that I'm going to go into on one of our videos. But basically, eventually, there was a power struggle, and Miscavige positioned himself with the attorney so that he could take over, and that's exactly what he ended up doing.
And folks, remember, I just put the link up there again. Goldie's put it up there several times to Mark's channel. The depth of stories that he has on there are amazing, and they go so much farther than the time we would ever have here for an interview. So make sure you get over there and you're checking that out. There's some great stuff going on there.
Subscribe now. Subscribe now.
Yeah, hit that like and subscribe. Now, did you know Pat and Annie at all?
I did. Yeah, I didn't know them as well as other people. Janice knew them very well, my co-host, but I did know them. Yes.
And Janice, I would love to get you on here for an interview as well. So keep
I'm
that
sure
in mind.
I'm sure she would be willing to do it. Yeah.
I'd love. I like I said, I was listening to your live stream, and she's just like you. There's so much information there. It's incredible.
Well, Janice spent 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, from the time she was 12 or 13 until she was 21, 22 years old with Hubbard every day. So, I mean, she spent more time with him than his family spent with him during that time. And that was all during a lot of the developments in Dianetics and Scientology. So, you know, she was right there as a firsthand person. She has a lot of information, a lot of stories.
Oh yeah, Goldie, can you put my email up there for Janice? Yeah, I'd love to have you on.
Yeah, Janice says on here we can schedule it.
Yep, that's what I was saying. Get that email to her. So Marjan brought it up, and some other folks have asked about it. Did you know Shelley at all?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I knew Shelley, but also her and David Miscavige, I took care of them for the last 6 years I was in the Sea Organization. You know, we shared an office together. Shelley was, you know, David Miscavige's assistant, right? But I was in charge of his office at the Gold Base. And we took care of his domestic needs, meaning his room, his laundry, meaning Shelley's as well, their food, as well as their administrative needs. You know, in those days we had copy machines and typewriters and printers and all that sort of stuff. But then also I dealt with the different things at the base up in Gilman Hot Springs, from, you know, building a recording studio to setting up audio visual lines and dealing with the movie productions and doing anything that needed to be done there, because Miscavige and Shelley would go back and forth from Los Angeles, because he also was involved with all the legal affairs and that type of thing, which I had no hand in. So they were in Los Angeles quite a bit, but I was basically the person that if he needed something, he contacted me and I took care of it, and Shelley as well.
How did their relationship seem during those times?
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, they were like they were a Sea Organization married couple. You know, you know, they lived together. I mean, it was like all of us Sea Org members. We worked long hours, you know, 15, 16 hours a day. Yeah. But you know, I mean, I was asked this by Claire Headley. I mean, did I ever see them be affectionate? And I said, yeah, I did. You know, I mean, nobody really held hands in public or that type of thing, but I would see tender moments and stuff in the office, and all that. But, you know, they were married and they were committed to each other.
And it's, you know, there's so much negative, you know, of course, with Shelley having gone missing and everything. Yeah. But the thing is that's the part I wanted to know. You know, they were married. I'm just, you know, what. Yeah. And you put that out there. There was a relationship there, and you know, I just don't see me personally. I mean, my wife and I, June 2nd, it'll be 33 years we've been married.
Congratulations!
Yeah, well, thank you. And you know, she's my best friend. Yeah. She's my sounding board. She's my muse, whatever you want to call it. But she is the other half of me. And,
well, and that's what happened with Shelley. I'm sure. I mean, I wasn't there, but there's no.
You dropped out again.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
That's all right. Yep, you're there.
Okay. There's no way that David Miscavige would ever let Shelley go as far as divorce or let her leave, because she knows where all the bodies are buried. She knows all the financials. She knows everything. So that will never happen. So.
Yep, you're jumping in and out. Give it a second here. Let it load up.
All right, I'm back now.
Yeah, what it does is you'll freeze up, and then it does like a fast forward to current time. It's actually pretty cool. Oh,
but I was saying that he would never let her go because she knows too much.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always wondered about was, you know, like I said, I try to take a different approach when I'm talking about these things, and I just wonder about, that was what I was wondering about. Were they actually a married couple? Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Going back through these questions here. Oh, Kenny, the editor, thank you for that super chat. Thank you, sir. Now, have you gone monetized yet, Mark?
I'm frozen again, but yes, yeah, we are monetized.
Excellent, good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Deviant Outcast. The early morning training routines are hypnotic by design, grooming members from the start. I'm only pointing it out as it's never talked about. What kind of, now I didn't know, I've never heard about that before. You had early morning training routines that you went through?
They're talking about the communication course where you do what are called training routines, and it's actually that he developed them, to teach people to communicate, but also to teach to train auditors, people who do processing. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that assessment. There were later training routines that absolutely I agree were basically mind control, but the early ones were basically to sit and confront each other. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Where you can actually confront something without turning away from it. And then it would be delivering a sentence so that it could be heard. Okay. And then acknowledging somebody that's speaking to you. In other words, acknowledge, thank you, I got that, so that they heard it. And it was basically teaching you a two-way communication where, John, you and I are having a two-way communication. I'm saying something to you. You're nodding your head right now. That's an acknowledgement. And then I'm sure you're going to ask me a question, and then I'm going to answer it. And that's a two-way communication. So that wasn't brainwashing. But later, there are other training routines where you actually are taking somebody's body and telling them they can't say anything. And you're telling them, look at that wall. Thank you. Walk over to that wall. Thank you. Touch that wall. Thank you. Turn around. Thank you. And then you do the same thing going the opposite direction. And they do it for hours.
That's textbook.
And it's the only Scientology stuff that I experienced that I hated. It literally, you would almost fall asleep after a while. And it was absolutely mind control and brainwashing in retrospect. And that's what I totally agree with that. But the communication TRs at the very beginning, training routines, they basically help you to communicate with people.
Yeah, that's not much different than going through detectives training. Mm-hmm. We would do the same kinds of things where we would literally sit down face to face with another person and sit there and just keep talking and asking questions to learn how to interview someone.
Right. And then if they start calling you names like you dirty, blah, 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 you're supposed to not react to it. And that's the same thing that the training routines would do. If somebody starts saying something to you, you just continue to confront them and not react to it,
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I'm sure Hubbard got it from the military or from, something, because he came up with it from somewhere. A lot of the stuff he got from somewhere else.
And there was some of that I learned in the military as well.
Yeah.
That, I can't go into that too deep, but that there was some things we, let's see, Jessica Hankins, what was your working relationship with Mark Headley in the studio? Did he lick any crackers?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. Okay. I left in September 1990, and I actually ran the project that got people up to the international, to the secret base. It was secret. It was confidential. People didn't know where it was, and you had to qualify to get up there. Well, the project that I ran actually got Mark Headley to the base, and he was only 16 years old. Wow. And it happened about 2-3 months before I finally left. So I never really had a lot of interaction with him, that I remember. Then afterwards, he reminded me, and I went, "Oh yeah, now I remember that." So his history starts literally when I left and goes forward. So we've been told this many times by people who, after we left, saying, "Oh, it's a good thing you left when you did, because it got way worse."
Now, did your wife do KRs on you and vice versa?
Yeah, she should have, and I should have, but that never happened.
I think that was more of a David Miscavige era kind of thing.
Well, no, it was a Scientology thing. Literally, I didn't tell my wife before I blew the first time that I was going to do it, because it would have been her responsibility to turn me in, and vice versa. Okay. So yeah, no, it's a ratting each other out society. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I find it so hilarious that they're so big on ratting each other out, but you can't talk to anyone else.
No,
You know, not law enforcement, not the government,
no.
anybody like that. Poor old Mark,
Well,
he's
that's
never
how I
going to live that
finally,
crack.
and that's how I finally escaped. Is that
Mhm.
I went into town, and I went straight to a motel. This is my third escape in like 3 months, and I realized that my wife was never going to leave with me. And so I went to a motel, and the first thing I did was I called up security, and I said, I'm coming back to the base, and you give me my car and you give me my stuff, or I'm going to the cops, and I'm showing up with the cops, and I'm dead serious. And I was. And that's when they finally took me seriously, because they knew I would show up with the police, and they didn't want any part of that.
Did you get hit with a freeloader bill?
Oh yeah, we got, it was completely exaggerated, but yeah, we did. We got a freeloader bill. Never paid it, but
That's good. I see so many people that do. KB, thank you for the question. Yeah, Mark had already gone over that, and yeah, they're still technically married, aren't they?
I guess so. I wouldn't know because I'm not around.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, as far as I know, and like you said, if he actually did divorce her and she got out, wow, the things she could say. Let's see here. Lori Plays, thank you for that super chat. Retired 24 years from the sheriff's office in Tampa. Great to see some Leos interested in showing Colt's true natures. Oh yeah. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for that super chat. I appreciate it. Let's see here. I want to go back. Colonel Brock has been waiting for this one to get answered. Sven Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
He's wanting to know, do you know if he's still alive?
I have no idea, but I did know Sven when I was in the Sea Organization in Clearwater. 1978, I was one of the executives at the Fort Harrison Hotel. I'm not going to go into the position because nobody would understand it. But basically, Sven Peterson was one of the cooks in the galley. He cooked at the Fort Harrison, and so he was the chief steward, which was the senior position for all the restaurants. So I dealt with him quite a bit then.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, that was a big one. He'd been wanting to get that one answered. Let's see if we got anything else. Jobo, question for either John or Mark. With all the exposure now about Scientology, do you ever think this cult will ever truly disappear? What would happen to all the real estate?
Bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to let my dog out the door. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Go outside.
Everybody knows with my Roscoe, he likes to jump in whenever he can. So I personally
think this cult will ever truly disappear, and what would happen to the real estate? Go ahead, John.
I think that as long as David Miscavige is alive and breathing, he's not going to let this go away. And I think that there's a lot of people who are really committed to it, that the same thing, they're not going to allow it to die, even if they lose their tax exemption. What are your thoughts?
No, I'm the same way. I mean, Miscavige has held on for this long. I mean, he's 62, 63 years old now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, I hate to say it, but even if he was indicted, I mean, the way their attorneys fight, he'll be 75, 80 years old before he would ever go to prison or anything like that. And I have no idea who's going to take over from him, but they basically are an empty shell. They basically own real estate. And that real estate is owned by Scientology. It's owned by the corporation. So whoever takes over the corporation and is the head of it, they'll be in charge of that real estate.
Right. That's one of the things I see. When there were politicians that I knew that it seemed like every one of them had property in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked one of them one day, I said, why is it that you have this property in Florida, yet you live here in Michigan, and I never see you go to your property in Florida? And they all said the same thing. If I ever get sued or indicted or anything like that, Florida property they can't touch.
Right.
So it all remains mine.
Well, and I can tell you about Miscavige. One of the things that people don't understand is, Miscavige lives this extravagant lifestyle now, paid for by Scientology. He flies on private jets. He's got, residences all over the organization, stuff like that. Up until 1990, when I left, he didn't have that. Okay. Right. He traveled business class or first class, on a rare occasion. But he traveled in airlines just like everybody else. Okay, he got paid bonuses and more money than other people, but it wasn't hugely extravagant. Okay, and the
Right.
reason was because they didn't have, first of all, he had to get control of Scientology, but then they didn't have their tax exempt status until 1993. And that basically gave him a license to do whatever he wanted. They were sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars in reserves, and he could do whatever he wanted at that point because there was nobody there to say boo and stop him.
Yep.
So all of that stuff happened after I left,
Right.
I just want people to understand that. I'm not trying to justify, because
Right.
Miscavige was an a-hole. Trust me, big time. You didn't want to deal with him, okay? But all that extravagance happened later on, and then he drove it into the ground. He turned it into a donations machine where people were just donating money for no return of service, So
Now, I know that you were there when Cruz came in.
yeah,
Did you ever actually get to meet him?
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
How was he?
We did a video on it. It's on our channel about when Tom met Dave, basically like when
Right.
Harry met Sally, because I was there when that happened. And we tell the whole story about how Tom Cruise got into Scientology through his girlfriend, then wife, Mimi Rogers, who was a Scientologist, and then how Miscavige took him away from her and
Right.
orchestrated and facilitated the divorce of them, and then hooked him up with Cruise wanted to hook up with Nicole Kidman, and how that all occurred. Okay, so I was there for all of that, but that's covered in our. Somebody wants to watch our video, it's on our site, our Scientology stories, peeling the onion.
And I hearing Mark, and I believe it was Mark and Claire talking about all the money that was spent to set up Cruz's home I found that just absolutely. Were you there during that, or was it after?
No, that happened afterwards.
Yeah, that was incredible to me.
Yeah.
What was now?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, he got free services and all because they wanted him to get into Scientology and get their hooks into him.
Oh yeah,
That was not Scientology policy. I mean, John Travolta and all those people, they didn't pay. They had to pay for their services. You know what I mean? It just became a special thing for Cruz, who had more money than most people in the world. But the Scientology paid for his family getting auditing. I heard from Mark Headley and all that. So it was just all they wanted to keep him happy and keep him in.
Now, how was Scientology? A lot of groups that you get into. I mean, you look in law enforcement, and it's absolutely rampant. How was it as a rumor mill kind of place?
You mean rumors amongst staff members?
Yeah, or about like Cruz was coming in, those kinds of things.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was within organizations because, like at the international base, there were several organizations and Religious Technology Center, which David Miscavige was the top of, and that's where I worked. There would be gossip amongst Miscavige and several of his senior executive friends, but the rank and file staff, they didn't know anything about that. I mean, Miscavige was terrible. He used to get reports on celebrities processing, private sessions, what they divulged, what they had done. And he would brag to other, he'd show off to other executives and talk about this person is this and that person is that and this person did that. It was not confidential the way it was supposed to be. But that was him. He was he was a dirty dude.
I keep in. The sad thing is it doesn't matter how long the person or how long ago they were in, as compared to newer people, you keep hearing the same kind of things, that he was making sure he was building these portfolios with dirt on people and things like that. And it's just, and I'm one of those people. I'm very, I'm very open-minded. I believe in be who you are, live your life. It's got to be, with the rumors you hear about John Travolta and his life and things like that, it's got to be just an incredible, so much pressure on him. If it's true, well, even if it's not true, just the rumors themselves, it's got to be incredibly, just a tense situation for him, being so encoded into Scientology.
Exactly.
So let's see. Goldie is asking, Can Mark explain rock slam for some of us? Some of us have forgotten exactly what that means.
Rock slamming is a needle phenomena on the e-meter, okay?
Mhm.
And basically, it's the needle's going crazy. It wants to jump out of the dial, and that's what, according to Hubbard, what that shows. That's my dog. 1 second.
Oh, you're fine.
Sorry. She's chasing away private investigators and SPs.
They probably got air tags on your car.
Yeah. Anyway, no, a rock slam, according to Hubbard, is supposed to show a point of insanity, some evil purpose or evil intention that the person has.
Right.
And if it happens on somebody like when they're being asked a question about L. Ron Hubbard or Miscavige or Scientology, then they're considered that's something that's considered suppressive, and then they would be sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force.
Wow. Now, first off, Maria Demazzi, where are you at, hon? I see you said that it's 3:55 in the morning there. How was the fair gaming when you were in there?
For me?
Well, not just you personally, but for those who had blown, or those who were considered.
I wasn't involved in that because, like I said, that would have been handled by the private investigators and legal and stuff like that. But when I left, we got it full time. You know, we had the first private investigator, this guy David LeBeau, who's become famous because he was one of their biggest private investigators for years. First place they used him was on us here in Las Vegas. We hired him at the company we worked at. He moved into the apartment building that we lived in. We disseminated Scientology to him. We played racquetball with him, and we figured out he was a private investigator within about 6 months.
That's you know, when I hear these stories about how they instill themselves in people's lives, and just to find out that they're private investigators working for the COS, my goodness, that just absolutely floors me.
Well, and the worst that happened to me, and we'll go into details on our channel at some point, is we had another guy who was sent in to us who worked at our company, and he basically became my best friend around the year 2000. And this is when the Lisa McPherson trial was going on in Clearwater, which was the woman who died under Scientology's care.
Right.
And they sent this guy in, and he became my best friend for over almost 10 years. I talked to him daily on the phone. We traveled together. We did things together. I had no idea that he was basically a Scientology spy. And it wasn't until 2009 when Marty Rathbun and Mike Rinder got out of, and they started speaking out, that I found out that this guy was a spy for Scientology. And I just, it blew me away.
It's just, that's crushing. That's absolutely crushing to find out that your best friend.
Yeah, it is.
Wow. Well, look at Paulette and the things they did to her.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's my goodness. That's just the lowest of the low. Linda Golan, when did you first meet Mike Rinder, and were you surprised that he blew?
I first met Mike Rinder in 1978 when I was in Clearwater. He was in the Commodore's Messenger organization and all that. But I became friends with his wife at the time, Kathy Rinder, who's now, the one who attacking him, the one who accuses him of, physically attacking her, breaking her arm. Huh?
She knows every inch of his body. She's an inch wife.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But I mean, Kathy and I shared an office together in management for, about 2 years, literally just me and her in the same office. And I loved Kathy at the time. She was a lot of fun and funny and all that. But like anything, she was brainwashed and basically toes the line when Mike Rinder blew. I mean, Mike Rinder then became, the international spokesman for Scientology, the head of the Office of Special Affairs. That all happened after I left. Right. But he was involved with several people that I knew after we left who they were going after. Scientology was going after. And then I was surprised when he finally left. I was really happy about it. And, I was happy about that. And we reconnected. And, it's one of the funny things. I mean, he was involved with a lot of the spying and stuff that was done to us here in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how you are as far as police officers go. didn't hold a grudge. You know what I mean? Once
Right.
he came out and he proved to us basically that he was on our side and was going to, speak out, it's like old, water under the bridge. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I accept him. I accept his new life. I'm happy for him.
When I see folks who had been targeted by Render and how he had acted back then, and now that they know him, that he's out and they are out, and he truly seems like he is repentive of what he's done.
Yeah.
And he realizes it. And I think that for me, that's something that really tells a lot. He doesn't
Absolutely.
give you that, well, it just happened, that's how it. No, he seems like he truly feels bad for the things that he did when he was there.
I
So,
agree.
and I think that makes the path of forgiveness that much easier.
Yeah.
So, you realize that now you have this guy who was so totally committed back then. Think about how good a friend he'll be now that he's no longer controlled by this organization. So I think that makes a real good stance for him.
Yeah.
Let's see. Veronica Bombria, is there any way to try and rescue Shelley Miscavige? I've talked about this with Aaron, and unless she actually comes forward or she gets a chance to escape, I don't see a way of doing it.
No,
She's
it's Stockholm syndrome. I don't know if it's that, but it's the same thing. Like when the federal authorities raided that Mormon cult organization in Utah, they went in there and the people didn't want to leave. And I think they made a mistake. This is my personal opinion. When the FBI was investigating in 2009, 2010, they were asked, some of the people that were being interviewed, hey, what would happen if we raided? They rightly told the FBI agents, oh, these people won't leave. They'll deny everything. But the biggest treasure trove of documents ever gotten was when the FBI raided Scientology in 1977 and found out all the infiltration of the government that the Guardian's office has been doing. And Scientology keeps files on everything, everything, because it's policy. They would have gone in there, gotten the files, gotten the information, and they would have found a lot of evidence of crime. So I wish they had actually done the raid.
Plus, another thing, you saw it yourself when you left. And fortunately for you, you had something that actually broke you of the spell of Scientology that made you want to get out. But for somebody like Shelley, who's so indoctrinated into it, she would literally have to be deprogrammed to be able to make her see what is going on.
It's like my ex-wife. I mean, my ex-wife got into in the Sea Organization, was on the ship, the Apollo, with L. Ron Hubbard from the time she was like 13, 14 years old. She's still in there to this day, and she had such a bond with Hubbard, and that's what Shelley. Shelley doesn't have really a bond with Miscavige anymore. She has a bond with L. Ron Hubbard, and she does not want to disappoint him. And I know that's one of the reasons why Mike Rinder didn't leave either, because he's even said it, was that, we had the belief that L. Ron Hubbard was going to come back, as crazy as that seems. Again, they put up a lot of abuse because of that. But they're so indoctrinated to that it's hard for them to change their mind.
And you see that with a lot of people who actually got to be around L. Ron and listen to him speak and be influenced by him. They become so enamored and become such disciples of his. And I think that's one of the things that separates him from David Miscavige, is the fact that L. Ron could literally make people believe in him. And it seems like Miscavige operates more out of fear.
That's exactly right. Hubbard, for his many, many, many faults, he had a lot of charisma. He was a storyteller. He wanted to ingratiate you to him, right? Miscavige doesn't have that at all. He didn't want to ingratiate anybody to him, okay? Right. He's one of the evil, most sadistic people that I've ever dealt with. Wow. And I'm not holding back when I say that. I mean, the things he's done are really sadistic, and he gets off on it, to be honest with you,
And I hear Mike Rinder talk about the reasons why he does some of these things, but you can't daily do these things to people unless you're enjoying it.
Right.
You've got to be a sadistic person.
Well, I was one of the first people he ever beat up, and that's why I left. About 2 months before, right before the second time I left, because I left 3 times, he beat me up, and I was completely shocked, and I was like, That's not Scientology. That's not why I got involved with this. I was raised by parents that was like, hey, you don't hit other people, And when
Right.
that happened, I was going like, this guy's crazy. He's not playing by the same rules as everybody else. And then it took me a few more weeks to finally figure out that he wasn't going to change. And that's why I decided to finally leave, despite the fact that my wife, who'd been turned against me, wouldn't leave with me. We'd been together for 7 years. They separated us. They kept us. We couldn't talk to each other. And basically, she sided with them, and I kept coming back because I didn't want to leave her. But then I realized that she was not going to change, and I was going to go crazy if I stayed there. And I'm glad I did leave when I left.
Excellent. And you're one of the few people that I hear that actually were assaulted by him, and that was it. That broke you of it. You listen to Render and some of the other folks,
And
and
they put up with it. I can't believe they did. I respect them, but we heard about it afterwards that that was on a routine basis. The whole, we couldn't believe the whole. I would have never put up with that for 1 second. I didn't care if they locked me down,
And I think
they're so indoctrinated they put up with it,
I think that's the difference between the LRH run Scientology and the DM run Scientology.
Yeah.
Like we'd said earlier, one was people were enamored, looked at him as a godlike figure, and the other rules by terror. So,
well, and here's the thing, and I'm not defending L. Ron Hubbard because he did a lot of despicable things, but if you got in trouble, you knew that at some point when he was still alive and still around, it would all go away and everything would be fine and you would keep going and moving on. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But it wasn't like that with Miscavige. It's like he basically put you down and kept you down and held you down, and that both were wrong. Both Hubbard and Miscavige were wrong, but there was a difference. So therefore, when you saw it with Hubbard, you kind of put up with it because you would see that eventually it would clear up, but it didn't do that with Miscavige.
And I think that that's to me, it's incredible. But when I look at it, LRH is the one who laid the groundwork that Miscavige works off of.
Yeah.
Through the tech that says if someone does something, why don't they have a black eye? Those kinds of things. And I don't know it by heart like someone who's like you who literally studied it. But those are the kinds of things that I see, and I understand. This is why he's doing it, because the tech that he was dealing with was basically telling him to do it.
Well, and the thing is that it's like you don't know if Hubbard really meant it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know, or if he was just saying it as a a phrase, a throwaway phrase. You know what I mean? The famous one that happened that really disaffected me early on in 1982 was there was a guy named John Axel, and he did something that Hubbard didn't like, and Hubbard was in hiding or whatever. And he wrote to Miscavige, John Axel messed up in this and this and this and this, and then he went, he should, get, ethics cleanup and this up that, and then as a throwaway line, he goes, and by the way, spit on him for me. Okay.
Nice.
Miscavige literally went and spit on the man. Okay. I mean, literally. I don't think Hubbard literally meant go spit on him. Okay?
Right.
It was a throwaway line because he was so upset, just going, oh yeah, and by the way, spit on the guy for me. That doesn't mean go do it,
Having
Anybody
been
with any
someone who's been
judgment will go,
spit on. Oh, yeah. I as a police officer, I've had people spit at or spit on me, so I know how bad that feels. My goodness. Ooh.
sorry, I froze like this.
And you froze again.
I know.
Care for JCYT was talking about the points of the private investigator being your best friend for like 10 years and how you could trust again after that. That's just amazing.
Yeah. How do I trust again?
Mhm.
That's my basic nature.
Yeah. So let's see. We'll give it a second here.
I'm back to you. I don't know why that's happening, but anyway, yeah, no, I treat people the way I want to be treated, and but yeah, it's hard to trust people.
Yeah. Let's see, Goldie. It's a good point. No way you could treat people so badly. So consistency if you're not enjoying it, or either overtly or covertly. That's an excellent point. Then we had two. We had Martha Simmons and we had Marjan. Both were asking, about assault charges, Marjan, yeah, I can tell you that something from the 1990s, most of your assault charges would be in the misdemeanor range, and they would be out of time on those.
Well, I can tell you when he beat me up,
Mhm.
people have asked me, why didn't you fight back or file an assault charges? First of all, Miscavige never went anywhere alone. He always had an entourage there. If I had fought back, the other guys, everybody else would have jumped on me. So I'm not going to do that. But I wanted everybody, I covered up and went down on the ground and let him kick and hit me and pull my hair and all that, because I wanted all the people around to see that he was crazy. I wanted to make an example of him to see that he was crazy. And when he was done, I stood up, I looked him in the eye, and I pointed my finger at him and I said, "You really know, do you notice I didn't lay a finger on you?" You know what I mean? Because at that time I was thinking about going to the authorities at some point. And I could see that he didn't like that, you know, that basically kind of scared him a little bit. Then I said that. And then I reached behind my head and I pulled it out and it was bleeding. And I said, "You made my head bleed." You know, so I think I did more by not fighting back, you know what I mean, than fighting back. It would have been worse.
And it's a matter of control and respect for yourself in a situation like that. You know, there were many times as a police officer where if I wasn't able to control my temper or my own actions, yeah, I could have easily hurt people. But you know, what would that have done? I mean, you're meeting violence with violence, you know, and he's the one who's going to have to end up paying for it in the long run, you know. But talking to you know, Doug Kramer.
I don't.
Doug Kramer was he's part of the Four Horsemen that I do with my channel here. He's a former Scientologist. Now, he wasn't a staff or OSA or anything like that. He actually became a television and movie celebrity. But you know, when we were talking and he was explaining getting into upper OT levels, and that's something I've talked about a few times, is the fact that how they believe these folks actually believe themselves to be gods. I understand at that point why it's so easy for someone like David Miscavige to act the way he would. Is that if you think you're a god, then who can actually touch you or who can actually prove you wrong? So, you know, I see that a lot with the whole narcissistic kind of tendencies that you see coming out of people. It's just amazing. Oh my goodness. So now when LRH passed away, did you got the notice from before that they were making special officers out of Pat and Annie Broker?
No, that was announced afterwards.
Okay.
They put out an issue after, like the day afterwards.
Did you ever see that actual memo yourself?
Yeah, it was what's called a flag order, which is a Sea Organization policy letter was put out there. And it was basically a statement from L. Ron Hubbard saying he was going off to Sector 2 and that Pat and Annie were made loyal officers and, you know, that type of thing. But wasn't too long after that Miscavige had them all rounded up because he said they were a forgery.
Wow. How did that go over with the folks that you knew, or did you hear anything from them about the fact that Miscavige was calling this a forgery and that they weren't actually the special officers or whatever? I mean, I was surprised when he kind of intimated that to me before they were pulled back. And to me, it was kind of like him talking treason, you know. I mean, it was like, but I worked for him, so it was kind of like, well, I had to kind of pick my side, you know. That's just crazy. It's, you know, the ability to make people believe what you're saying and what you're doing is right, and that you have the authority to do it. But that all goes down to that complete mentality, like we were talking about, where you're so indoctrinated into something. How do you go against something you've built your life off of? Yeah. And then, like you were saying, you're as part of the Sea Org, you're completely isolated from the rest of the world. You're so deeply entrenched in what they are doing and the mission that you have before you. And, you know, and again, that's something I can relate to from both the military and from my law enforcement career. You know, that entrenchment where you're not talking with other folks that are in law enforcement or in the military. You have a singular point that you're going towards. So I understand completely on that. Did you ever make it on either of the boats that he had, the ships?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Never made it on there. I didn't end up going very many places when I was in this organization because Miscavige always needed me at the secret base at Gilman Hot Springs. So if something came up, I had to stay there and man the ship, basically.
Yeah, you got stuck with the babysitting procedures there. Well, yeah. So now, did you know about the things like the where they're preserving the tech, having it inscribed on?
Yeah.
What were the thoughts on that?
Well, that was the Church of Spiritual Technology was set up, and after Hubbard died, I mean, they set up they bought these properties, and I was, when I was working for Miscavige, I was working with Norman Starkey, who was the executor of L. Ron Hubbard's estate, and basically I'm working for DM. But anyway, I had to get personnel for Church of Spiritual Technology. I had to send people up that were qualified from the Sea organization up there to Lake Arrowhead, the property up there. Wow. I got to tour at one time and saw what they were doing up there. But yeah, no, I got a lot of staff up there.
How was Hubbard's home? How was that?
You're talking about at the Gold Base?
I think that was the one. I think one of them was
I mean, they built homes at the different locations where the archives were. But the house at Golden Era Productions, the Gilman Hot Springs at that time, was an old house that was built probably in the 1950s. Okay.
Wow.
But it was up on the hillside and had a view of the entire valley, and it was called Bonnie View. And we called it BV for short. But it was very simple. It was not the grandiose mansion that Miscavige built after we left. Okay? The house that Hubbard had was literally probably a 3-bedroom, 1-story house that was built in the 1950s. Now, it was beautifully landscaped. It had a Japanese garden with a koi pond in the back that was gorgeous that we put in for him. And we built a separate laundry building to do all of his laundry because he was such a stickler about his laundry, and a separate garage. But the house was so old that when he was still alive and in hiding, we had to get the base ready for his return if they got what was called an all clear of all of his legal entanglements. So they went in and inspected the house, and they found mold in the walls. So rather than tearing it down and building a new house, we had to jack up the house on jacks, kill all the mold, put down a moisture barrier, put down a new foundation, and then lower that same old house on top of this, the new foundation. So that's basically, Bonnie View. That's what he had.
that seems, but they have someone who irons his pajamas every day.
Oh yeah. No, his laundry habits were outrageous. You know what I mean? Literally, he had a smell out. He could smell anything in the clothes. You'd smell clothes and there would be no odor, and he said there was odor. So literally, he had people out there rinsing his clothes over and over. Brand new clothes that had never been worn. They'd be washed and then rinsed in garbage cans of water and different chemicals and stuff to get the smell out. Okay,
sounds almost Howard Hughes-esque.
It was, and the crazy thing afterwards, when I think about it, the guy was a cool smoker, unfiltered cools. I mean, how would you be, susceptible to smells in your clothes?
Yeah,
and yet you smoke cigarettes nonstop.
Yeah, that's well. I mean, he was a god who could. He was a god who could fix him, who could heal himself, but he couldn't fix them jacked up teeth he's got.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So after you left and you started finding out the truths about LRH, how did that impact you?
Well, it was a couple years after I left. Literally, when we left, this is how indoctrinated we were. I told you I ended up with my friends here in Las Vegas. We literally left thinking, okay, we'll come back when L. Ron Hubbard returns. We really thought that L. Ron Hubbard was going to come back in his next lifetime and would take over, and he'll sort everything out then. That's how indoctrinated we were when we left. Okay. But it was a couple years later, after some various things happened, that I read the book Barefaced Messiah by Russell Miller. It's an excellent, excellent deep dive biography into L. Ron Hubbard's life based on an actual reporter digging into his files in life. And that completely changed my viewpoint about L. Ron Hubbard. There were things that I read in there that I was shocked by, and I started to question, what it was that I was involved in.
Right. That's, I mean, to find those truths out had to be so shocking, but then again, probably things started falling into place as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, because I realized reading his biography and his history, every single person that helped him from the 1950s, who was like his biggest benefactor and his biggest friend, every single one of them he turned on. And all of a sudden they were the biggest enemy of all time and needed to be destroyed. And I saw that pattern happen over and over and over again, not just with people that he worked with, but with his family members too, like his son and all that. And I realized that's how he was really in the Sea Organization too. I'm talking about Hubbard.
Right.
A guy like David Mayo, who literally saved his life, all of a sudden became, the biggest criminal of all time and had to be gotten rid of, and destroyed.
Wow.
And I saw that. And when I was in the Sea Organization, of course, you justify, you go like, oh, well, he must know what he's talking about. But then when I read Russell Miller's book, you see the pattern. You go like, this guy was a paranoid schizophrenic. I mean, he literally was paranoid.
And not only and a narcissist.
Yes, absolutely.
OBG Foster, you were new to COS in 1977. Did members hear about the raid?
I was a public Scientologist, was in high school at that time. And actually, I'd just gotten out of high school. But yeah, no, we heard about it through the newspaper. But the Scientology and the Guardian's office told us that, that we were being persecuted and that they were charging, Scientology people with stealing Xerox paper. I mean, literally, that's what they told us.
Wow. How Marjan was wanting to know, did your father ever have any interactions with David Miscavige?
No.
So, yeah, that's one of the questions she had, was if he'd ever had any interactions or if he was treated badly. Let's see here.
No, what happened with my dad is he became the executive director of a Scientology mission in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And it actually was the mission where David Miscavige, Ron Miscavige, and the Miscavige family got into Scientology. But my dad got there afterwards, and he was working there. But then around 1979, 1980, I was in the Sea Organization, and my dad and everybody in that mission, they decided to close it down because they got involved in some other group. So they got declared suppressive people. So I had a choice. Do I want to disconnect from my father, or do I want to continue my career in the Sea Organization? And at that time, I was 21 years old, and I chose the Sea Organization,
And it's understandable. I mean, you were in there so deep and so hard at that point, that would be the next logical step to make.
Well, and it was selfish in retrospect on my part, because my whole goal was to work with L. Ron Hubbard. He was still alive, and I wanted to go and work at his location.
Wow.
And basically, I couldn't do that if I was connected to my father and my brother, who got declared as well at 16. And so I made the choice to disconnect. And after I left in 1990-91, I reconnected with my father and my brother both.
And
Sandy, it was a mistake.
Sandy, no, he wasn't born in. He actually joined when he was about 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
His father had gotten him into it. Someone had made a comment about a lot of COS members wanting to be firefighters. Do you know?
All I know is Gary Moorhead Jackson. He was a volunteer firefighter at the base.
Oh, okay.
He got involved with it. That's the only thing I know about.
Okay. So I'm just trying to get through all these, all the chats and everything. Folks, again, if you have any questions, make sure that you put the @ symbol followed by Poe. And that way I know what you got. So any questions you got, make sure you get them up there for us.
Don't forget to like and subscribe our John's channel and my channel.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Thank you. What do you think about, you see these things coming out now? I don't know what your experience is with the Tampa Brad or with Grant Cardone.
I don't know. I don't follow that. I don't know.
I just find it interesting that you have these folks who aren't celebrities, but they're certainly they're out there in the public face, and they're out there pushing the whole Scientology thing. Grant Cardone does a lot with the financial stuff, and there's a lot of investigations going on with him and his brother about dealings they've had. But I just find it interesting. This guy puts himself out there in so many situations where he's being interviewed. He was on something with one of the Paul brothers, and they literally asked him about Xenu in the interview. And, he, of course, did everything he could to sidestep it and not answer it. But I'm amazed that you have these Scientologists that are active Scientologists that are doing such public things.
Yeah.
And, plus you have so many scandals going on now, after the Chase wave and then what happened in Cincinnati. Now you have another group of Scientologists that are being looked into for fraudulent things. You have the group that had I think they were chiropractors, had these wellness centers where they're being looked at for committing fraud. The ladies in Florida who were selling properties that weren't theirs, that are either being investigated or indicted. I mean, it's amazing how much negative is coming out now. And I'm just wondering, back in your time, you didn't see things like that coming out with the members of Scientology. What are your thoughts about how that's all coming out?
To be honest with you, I don't follow it that closely. I know who Grant Cardone is and the other stuff, but I haven't really spent a lot of time following that stuff. The stuff I more follow is like Danny Masterson trial, anything having to do with Miscavige and
Right.
The legal aspects of those cases and stuff like that. The other stuff I don't really have any opinion on because I don't really know that much about it.
Me personally, I haven't been watching the Masterson case. I spent so many years in and out of court as a police officer, and my thing is that there might be some revelations that are coming out to it, but I always wait till after it's over with to start putting my viewpoints on things like that, because you never know what's going to happen with a jury. And being a former MMA guy, one of our biggest rules is you never let it go to the judges. Well, that's what's going on with this. So it could go either way.
My viewpoint on Danny Masterson, I don't know all the facts. I've read a lot of the transcripts of the daily stuff and all that. But I will tell you this, there's no way the Scientology didn't know everything that was happening back in 2000, whatever it was, early on. Because if they pulled those women in and had them write up knowledge reports, and then they pulled in Danny Masterson and they put him on the meter, I guarantee you they found out every detail about what went on. And they know exactly what went on. And I'm not surprised in the slightest that apparently there's a grand jury that's investigating them for some kind of obstruction, because they know what's going on. And the fact that they're sitting there and defending Danny Masterson is disgusting. I don't know that he did it or not, but they know, and they should be helping, not covering it up.
Well, if you notice in any situation like that where you have someone who is considered such a prominent person in it, the organizations like that almost always just turn their back on them and walk away. And like with you, I'm very surprised that they are defending him at the level that they are. And it's just, I don't know yes or no if he did it or not.
No. But I'll tell you something, John, as a detective and a police officer, I'll tell you from a Scientology point of view, when I was involved in Scientology, when they put you on a meter and lock the door, and they're going to find out everything that you did. Okay. They're literally going to find out everything that you did. Because if you're a Scientologist, it doesn't matter if you're a Scientologist or not. That e-meter that they used, it works similar to a lie detector, but literally they can tell a lot about if somebody's lying or not. And if somebody's a true Scientologist, they're going to spill their beans. Okay.
Right.
Because they think their eternity is in jeopardy. So there's no way that they don't know what happened there. These women were Scientologists at the time, and Danny Masterson was Scientologist, so they know what was going on.
That's it's and Camilla Peterson asking if this case exposes the abuses of Scientology and might lead to further investigations. I think it's already exposing the abuses.
Yeah.
Having Claire up there and giving her testimony as to how they handle things, how they obstruct justice, those kinds of things. I think that honestly just points out what they do. So
and then it was the revelation that one of Scientology's attorney had the discovery, that could have only come from the defense side of things.
To me, it's amazing. And then, no, I still haven't fixed this chair, folks. Let's see. More Bobo. We had talked about that earlier, and I think we came to the consensus that it's not a matter of years. It's a matter of how many. He's asking about how many years before we'll be shut down, Sandcastle crumble, and how we had discussed the fact that as long as there are people that are living and breathing and believing in Scientology, it's going to continue no matter what its status is.
Yeah.
So let's see. Edna Lead. Somebody messed up Danny M's sec check because he kept doing it. Well, if you went by there,
they never dealt with him. They never handled it.
yeah. I mean, I think that falls along the lines of the rumors about John Travolta and those kinds of things. The truth is out there, and they've got it confronted at some point. It's going to end up blowing up in their faces. So, to me, that's just incredible.
Right, and you probably know John as a former detective and all that. People who get away with a crime like that, they do it again and again. They become serial rapists. They become serial murderers and all that. There's a reason why they do it, and they continue to do it if they get away with it.
It's, and one of the sad things that I find is a lot of people who go down that path were generally victims themselves at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with it is that they start to feel that that's the only way they can feel love or affection is through that. And then you have other folks who become very famous, very popular, very considering themselves very powerful, who they just don't care.
Right.
They just, people are nothing to them. They're the only one that matters. So there's a lot there. But yeah, if they did things the proper way, like they say they do in their tech and all that, that should have been handled a long time ago.
Yeah.
Let's see. Trying to look and see what we got here questions wise. Now, were you there when they started coming out with the revisions of all the tech and everything, saying that there was a typo in the books and things like that?
No. That was Miscavige basically changing things the way he wanted it.
Oh yeah, that, and I think it was a money grab, to be honest with you. No,
because they was reselling the old stuff to the same people because that's all they could do.
It's crazy. Now, your wife, did she finally ever come out, or did
she's still in the Sea organization?
Yeah, you were saying that. I'm sorry.
She eventually remarried to one of the musicians in Golden Era Productions.
Wow.
His name's Peter Schless, and he's famous. Before he got into Scientology, he and his wife Karen at the time, they co-wrote the song by Jeffrey Osborne in the mid '80s called "On the Wings of Love."
I've heard that.
I'm sure some people remember that, "On the Wings of Love."
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
So he wrote that before he got in Scientology. He's probably still making money from that song.
That's crazy.
She remarried to him, and I know him. Look, I hope she comes out, but she got to live her life. So.
Yeah, you guys are no longer together, but I'm sure you don't wish her any ill will. But
we never had a fight. We were married for 6.5 years. We never had a problem. And as a matter of fact, that's what started my downward spiral to leave, is that Miscavige surreptitiously had my wife sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force, and I was in complete disagreement with it. So I was so upset about it that he took me off my position and made me do manual labor. And that's what started me thinking, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong here,
Yeah.
That was basically my Achilles heel, was my wife. He could do things to me, he could say things to me and all that, didn't matter. But when he started going after my wife, that upset me.
And I completely concur with you on that. I can take a beating all day long. I've got a great threshold for pain.
Mm-hmm.
Do whatever you want to me. I can deal with it. But the minute you start hurting my family, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Let's see. This one right here. Do you think that Hubbard was in the closet since he was so anti-LGBT?
No.
I think that was just the era when when Hubbard was raised and the kind of mentality that it came with.
Yeah.
I mean, even for someone like me, I have a lot of people that I know to this day that are anti-LGBT. So
it's society was different. I mean, society has grown. We didn't have gay marriage until recently. It was everybody was against it, and now now I'm not. When I say everybody, I meant politicians were against it. But
right.
Now it's accepted, and it's the right thing to do.
And it's, I think that that's something that a lot of people don't understand is that, you know, growing up in the eras that we did as compared to how kids are growing up now, it's a completely different world.
Right.
My mom would send us out on the weekends or in the summertime, and the only rule was you come back before the street lights are on.
That's exactly right.
Nowadays, you don't want your kid leaving your yard.
No,
If they're in the yard, you want cameras on them the whole time so they know
no,
what's going
exactly. It's crazy.
on. I remember with my kids, they're 25 now, and I would literally have to make them go walk through the woods with me just so I could get them out of the house and off the computers and off their video games. So
Yeah,
these kids nowadays are so different than what we were raised with.
absolutely.
I mean, it's crazy. I'm a herpetologist. I love venomous snakes, and my mom's got old movies of when I was a kid coming home, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, coming home with buckets full of rattlesnakes and copperheads down in Kentucky.
Oh my gosh.
But that was the thing. We grew up running those hills. We knew what it
Yeah.
was. Nowadays, Lord, one of my kids is absolutely terrified of insects. And, it kills me that, here it is. I'm out there looking for these crazy wild things. And then here they are. They're terrified of anything that's not sterilized or
Yeah.
enclosed. So yeah, it's how do you, now you said, now you're still in the Las Vegas area?
Yeah. I still live in Las Vegas. My mother's still alive.
Oh.
She's going to be 93 in September.
That's awesome.
I'm here as long as she's here, and my
Yeah.
mother never got involved in Scientology. My parents got divorced shortly after, I graduated high school, and because my dad wanted to continue in Scientology, my mom didn't want to have anything to do with it. So, but I take care of her here in Las Vegas.
That's awesome.
Happy Mother's Day, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Yeah, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that are out there, and the impact that you have on your children's lives it's incredible. I love my family to death. I love my children without any question, but the love of a mother is far beyond what I can feel. And
I was separated from my mother in the Sea Organization for 14 years or whatever, 15 years, right? But she retired in 1999 and moved here to Las Vegas. And so I've spent 24 years with her. I've spent
Wow.
longer time with her here in Las Vegas than I did from birth until I graduated high school. So I've been very lucky to have a long relationship with my mother since that time.
How do you think living and working in the Las Vegas area has affected your thought process, your viewpoints on society and things like that? Because I'm sure it's a very different world there in the Las Vegas area than here it is in the country of Michigan, in the countryside of Michigan.
Well, I mean, the biggest difference for me, I don't gamble, but the biggest difference for me is the weather. I like the weather. I don't get change of season. We had change of season when I was a kid, but I can't stand snow and all that. So I'm really happy to be here. But the other thing that, it was great for the economy. The economy was great for, to do business here. So
Right.
and we made quite a lot of money. Then I lost it all when we had the crash in 2008, 2009.
Oh, I
And
bet.
then I had to slowly build it back up. And now I'm comfortably retired. So, and that's after spending all that time in the Sea Organization. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that left the Sea Organization that are a lot more successful than me. But I'll tell you something, you learn what's important in life, and to me,
Right.
I don't have to have a big house. I don't have to have lots of money. As long as
Exactly.
I got my family and friends and I can travel, I'm a happy man.
I think for me, the big thing nowadays, like we have a large house, but we had the twins, and then we were raising a friend's child for a number of years also. So we needed at least the 4 bedrooms,
Mhm.
but we're, at this point we could move down to a 1-story, 2-bedroom home just for the wife and I. The only thing we want is property, and we want our privacy. That's our big thing nowadays. Yeah, I can hear you on that. Let's see. Veronica Bombria, How could someone who is not a Scientologist help besides monetarily? We have local COS in my town, and I'm not sure what to do. Well, I would say support the Aftermath Foundation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Not just monetarily, but you can volunteer to help. There's a lot of people that blow, and they're going to need assistance one way or another, and that's a big thing. Let's see. Edna, when I blew, my parents helped me get back on my feet in less than a week. I was working full time. I think that the folks that were Sea Org, I mean, your work ethic is amazing. That to me, that's
well, we got used to it.
Yeah. And
also discipline, just like if you go in the military, you learn discipline, right? You learn to be on time, right? Well, you learn that in the Sea organization too, and so that's half the battle when you're working a regular job, is making sure you're there and on time.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. It's for me, when I left the military, the transition to law enforcement was so easy because I went from military to paramilitary, and I know that when I came out of the military, I felt lost because there was so little discipline in society. Yeah. So I'm sure you guys.
I'll be honest with you. I'm sure you'll agree from being in the military. When I was in the Sea organization, it toughened me up as a person, as a kid. Oh, yeah. I was a teenager, it toughened me up. All of a sudden, I'm being held responsible for things that I got away with when I was a kid in high school.
Yeah. I had
to be on time.
I remember the very first night in basic training when they stood there and they said, "Your mom and dad ain't here no more. This is all on you." And you grew up really quick starting that first night in basic.
Yeah.
And folks, if you are someone who is in Scientology and you are looking to make your move to get away from it, there are people out there that do care. We want to help you. We want to see you succeed. We want to see you on your feet. The Aftermath Foundation is the place to go. They can do it anonymously. You can come out. They will do everything that they can to help get you back on your feet. It's an amazing organization.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Trying to look at all these questions here. Mark, I really appreciate you and your stories and what you've went through and how you've come out on the other side, and you're doing so well.
I appreciate it, John.
It's amazing. So few people come out of something like that, and they're so hardened and destroyed, but you're doing good. And I love seeing what's going on with you and how you've got your channel up and going now. See, you're up to almost 4,000 subscribers.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
In 4 weeks, not too bad.
Nobody can talk crap about that. But I'm gonna let you get going here, sir. I truly appreciate you and everything that you're doing. If you need anything at all, you'd give me a call or shoot me a message. Here for you. Do you have any parting thoughts before we break off from here?
Well, John, I appreciate it. I've enjoyed speaking with you and speaking with all the people that are viewing here. And I'm sure Janice will be happy to be interviewed if you want to schedule that with her. That shouldn't be a problem at all. And like I said, subscribe to John's channel, subscribe to our channel. And we're not doing this I know I'm not doing it for monetary gain, but by subscribing and liking, it gets the message out to other people who have never heard the stories about Scientology, and it's beneficial for everybody.
And for those you've got, we know that there are OSA members who are watching these things and they're keeping track of what's going on. And this is a great way to let them know that they can survive and they can make it on their own afterwards. Yep. So, folks, as always, thank you so much for joining us. This has been yet another amazing conversation with someone that I admire, and I'm honored to be able to speak with. And you get one shot at this life. Life is short, so please make it count. Thanks, Mark, John. If you can hang out for a moment there, I'm going to close this out, and here we go.